If you've been struggling with doing crow pose, or maybe you're a teacher looking for better ways to serve your students with more tools, this is going to be the video for you. I'm going to break down crow pose into 3 key steps so that you can understand better what's happening in the posture in your body, as well as assess which part you're having trouble with so that you don't need to keep practicing the posture over and over and over again, hoping that you'll eventually get it. You can address the specific issue that's happening and target that issue with specific drills. In the first pillar of this, you have your foundation, and in your foundation, you have your hands because you are balancing on your hands. And to make sure that you're not falling forward or back, you're going to be using your fingers as micro balancers. And beyond that, it is an arm balance, so you need an element of strength. So being able to do about 10 chaturangas or 10 push-ups is going to be a good indicator that maybe you're ready for an arm balance like crow pose. So when it comes to your hands, you don't necessarily want to spread your hands as wide as possible, because the more effort that you're spending on spreading your hands, the less power you're giving yourself to be able to push your fingers into the ground. So having a natural spread in the hands is going to be helpful, or maybe a little bit wider, but not as wide as you possibly can. And you can test this out. Take one arm and spread your hand as wide as you can, and then pretend that you're playing a piano and wiggle your fingers around. You're going to notice that your forearm is starting to get gassed pretty quickly, and you're going to do the same thing on the other hand, but you're going to come into a natural spread and do the same thing. You're going to notice you have a lot more control, you have a lot more power, and you have a lot more endurance. And that's the idea when we come into our arm balance. You want to be able to have that endurance, that power, and that control. The next pillar to this is knee placement. And there's a few places that you can place your knees, and there's no one particular position that is correct or incorrect. It comes down to preference. And there are some positions that make transitions into other things easier, like coming into an arm balance or hopping back into chaturanga or pressing up into a handstand. So one of the easiest places that you can start is having the knees out a little bit wider and wrapping on the outside of your arms so that you can use the strength of your inner thighs to squeeze the arms in. And while you're doing that, your arms are going to be pushing, resisting against that, and helping you engage your muscles in your chest so that you add a bit of strength into the posture. That tends to be the easiest pose, and some people call this frog pose instead of crow pose, but it looks like this. Knees out to the side, squeezing the elbows in, elbows pushing out against, and you hover here. Next, the most common one and the way that I like to teach is knee right behind the elbow. And right where your tricep starts to have a little bit of a divot, that's where I'm going to place the divot in my knee into the divot in my arm. And we're going to plant the hands down and lean forward and come into crow pose this way. That's my preference. The other way is knee all the way up into the armpit, a little bit higher, which takes a bit more wrist flexibility, but doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it right. Now, a limiting factor to what makes knee placement difficult or easy is going to be your ability to hold your knee in this flexed position. So you need spine flexion, your ability for your spine to round, and you also need hip flexion, your ability for your knee to come up to your chest and hold that position. So that's where strength comes into play. But not just any strength, is strength in your end range. Strength while your knee is close to your chest. So if you struggle with that, you're going to see things like knees sliding off the arms, something like this. And the last pillar to this is understanding that it is an arm balance. Key phrase, balance. There's a fulcrum point, and a lot of people tend to hop into it too quickly, and it throws off their balance, and the adjustments that they're trying to make are too wide. If you can narrow those adjustments into micro adjustments, the easier it's going to be. So I'm going to give you one helpful tip that's going to make this progress a little bit better, and I think is going to be the most helpful tip for you nailing your crow pose consistently in this video. And for this, you need 2 yoga blocks. One, so that it'll go on your forehead when you dip forward, and one for your feet so that it brings your hips up a little bit higher. Now, the idea for this is you're narrowing the distance in which you have to balance over your arms. So plant your hands down in the middle, place your knees maybe behind the triceps, and dip forward. You can overshoot it by placing your head down and then picking up your toes and see what that feels like. You can put your toes down and lift up your head and see what that feels like, and then slowly narrow the distance. You don't want to hop into it. You want to slowly find that fulcrum point, that balance point, to where you can balance just on your hands without touching your head or touching your toes. And that little micro balance is going to come from your fingertips pushing into the ground when you dip a little bit too far forward and your forehead comes down. And then it's your knees hugging in if you start to fall back a little bit and your toes start to come down. But staying within this narrow range is going to help you build a bit more consistency so that you can feel in your body what point is your balance point. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're interested in understanding how your body works in different yoga postures, and I mean over 100 yoga postures, I built the Encyclopedia of Yoga Poses that's going to be released in my online yoga studio. So if you want to stay connected on when that's released, click the link below and stay in the newsletter, and we'll stay connected.